His voice cut through the clink of silverware. "Did you get the email about your trust fund?" My hand froze midair, holding the wine glass just above the table. The words hung in the air like a dense fog, suffocating me. Trust fund? I could feel the blood drain from my face, and the sharp scraping of my mother's fork against her plate was like a warning siren in my ears. What the hell was he talking about? No one had ever told me about a trust fund. I glanced at my mother. Her gaze darted to the table, avoiding mine. She always did that when things were about to get ugly. I fought to keep my voice steady. "What trust fund?" Grandpa didn't answer me. Instead, he slid his laptop across the table, its screen glowing in the dim light of the dining room. The pale light from the screen illuminated the furrowed lines on his face as he stared at me with piercing eyes. He didn't look like a man who was about to reveal something as trivial as money. No, he was about to unearth something far darker. The screen blinked, and there it was, bank statements, 10 years of them, each one with my name at the top of every page. My name. I blinked, trying to make sense of the words that blurred in front of me. My mother's face drained of color as she whispered, "That can't be right." Grandpa's eyes never left mine. "Good," he said, his voice low. "Let's see who changed the contact email." The room fell silent. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He knew something. And in that moment, I knew I was in the midst of something far bigger than a dinner conversation. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. He clicked the security history tab, and the numbers, the signatures, the dates, everything hit me like a train. It all started to click into place. My stomach churned as Grandpa clicked through the pages. "There," he said, pointing to a line that had been highlighted. "Email changed by Sarah Coleman." My mother's hand shot out toward the laptop, too slow to stop the inevitable reveal. The woman sitting across from me, my mother, was staring at me like a stranger, like she had just been caught in the act of robbery. The breath in my lungs felt shallow, but I stayed calm, too calm. I kept my voice steady, my tone even. That's not possible." "Oh, it's possible," Grandpa said, his eyes sharp. "You see, Sarah, she changed the email so she could receive the notifications, approve the withdrawals, and keep the money for herself." I felt sick. Every word that Grandpa spoke seemed to unravel the lies I had been fed for years. All those birthday cards that were never truly from Grandpa. All those times when my mother told me that Grandpa didn't care about us. How he was cold, distant, selfish, and that we were lucky she kept food on the table. I had believed every word of it. But in that moment, everything changed. My mother had been taking the money all along, silently robbing me of what was mine. I had been working part-time since I was 14. I wore hand-me-down clothes, lived in old apartments, struggled to make ends meet. I sacrificed so much just to make it through high school, through college, believing my mother's lies that there was nothing left. But there was always something. Just never for me. She'd always had new dresses, new bags, new excuses. I had never once suspected that everything was a lie. Grandpa's voice cut through my thoughts. "Let's see where the money went." His fingers clicked the mouse again, and the page scrolled down. The numbers, the transfers, the dates, all the signs of a well-orchestrated theft. Millions of dollars gone. Not on us, not on me. All of it spent on her. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Instead, I waited. I gathered the evidence. Every single withdrawal. Every screenshot. Every transfer. I knew it wasn't enough to just confront her. No, I had to make her face the truth, and I needed to make sure Grandpa knew. So I called him. The conversation was short, but it was all I needed. I told him it was about the trust fund, and the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. He knew. He understood. "I'll set up a dinner," he said. I didn't argue. I didn't hesitate. The trap had been set. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The dinner table felt like an execution chamber. I sat there, my fork steady, breathing controlled, trying not to let my emotions slip. Every piece of cutlery, every clink of silverware, felt amplified in the silence that stretched between us. My mother fidgeted across from me, her eyes darting nervously between Grandpa and me, but she was smart enough not to speak. She knew she was caught. She knew I had the evidence, but she couldn't imagine that I would ever confront her like this. Grandpa, however, was different. He wasn't just rich, he was ruthless. He had seen more deceit than I could ever dream of, and he didn't care about appearances. The weight of his presence in the room pressed down on me like a storm cloud gathering strength. I didn't need to look at him to know his focus was entirely on me. His silence was louder than any words he could have spoken, and it seemed to cut through the air like a sharp blade, waiting for me to make my move. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a family dinner anymore. This was the reckoning. The lawyer stood in the kitchen watching through the doorway, while the detective loomed in the shadows. The two of them were here for one reason: to witness the final act of the betrayal I had lived through. It wasn't just my mother's lies that hung in the air. It was the heavy scent of justice closing in on her. She had no escape now. Grandpa clicked open the email history on his laptop. The room held its collective breath. The only sound was the soft tap of the mouse as he scrolled through the records. His eyes never left the screen, but I could feel him testing the silence, letting the weight of the moment build. And then he found it. "There," he said, his voice cutting through the stillness like a hot knife through butter. "Email changed by Sarah Coleman." I could feel my heart stop. My mother's hand shot out across the table in a futile attempt to stop him, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. She went pale, her face draining of color, and her lips trembled as she tried to fabricate an excuse, any excuse. "Someone hacked," she stammered, her voice higher than usual, frantic. "That's identity theft, Grandpa. You've got it all wrong." But Grandpa wasn't having any of it. His voice remained calm, steady, like a man who had seen this kind of deceit 1,000 times before. His gaze didn't waver. "I raised a liar once," he said, his words deliberate. "I won't do it again." The room seemed to contract, the walls closing in on my mother as the reality of the situation dawned on her. She had no more lies left. No more excuses. Grandpa's eyes never left hers, and I could feel the tension rising like a tide, ready to crash. The moment had arrived, and there was nothing she could do to stop it now. Grandpa handed me a folder, legal documents all signed. My name was there, replacing hers. The inheritance was mine. Full control was mine. My hand shook, but I didn't look away. I couldn't. This was it. This was the proof that everything I had ever been told was a lie. But then Grandpa didn't stop there. He clicked through the pages, and there it was, the final blow. My mother had signed papers, claiming that I had approved all of this. She had forged my signature. Forgery. A felony. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My whole life had been a lie. Every struggle, every sacrifice had been built on deception. She had stolen everything from me. But now I had the law on my side. The detective, who had been standing silently behind my mother, stepped forward. He took the folder from Grandpa's hands and began reading her rights aloud. My mother's eyes widened in disbelief as the weight of the situation settled over her like a heavy cloak. The betrayal she had so freely inflicted on me now came crashing back, hard and fast. There was no way out. No escape. She lunged to stand, but the detective's firm grip on her shoulder held her back. "No!" she shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. "You ungrateful child. You don't understand." "I do," I cut in, my voice quiet but filled with a quiet, simmering rage. "You stole everything. You never once gave a damn about me, only about yourself." The words tasted bitter, but they were the truth. For the first time, I felt the weight of all those years of manipulation and lies lift off my shoulders. There was no more shame. There was no more pretending. This was the end of it. The detective's hand remained firm on her shoulder as he led her away. She didn't struggle. She didn't scream. She knew it was too late for that. Her fate had already been sealed, and now there was no turning back. She had crossed a line, and the law had no mercy for people like her. Her screams echoed through the house as she was led out the door, but I didn't flinch. I didn't feel anything. My stomach didn't churn with satisfaction, and my heart didn't race with anger. I was empty, blank. All the emotions I had stored up for years were gone, replaced with something far more powerful: peace. I turned to Grandpa, who was watching me closely. His face, once so full of anger and coldness, now carried a mixture of regret and resolve. He sighed deeply and closed his laptop with a soft click. His voice when he spoke was quieter now. "I should have been there sooner." I nodded, but I wasn't angry at him anymore. Not after everything. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the poor kid begging for fairness. For the first time, I was the one writing the rules. I was the one with the power. Grandpa's eyes softened just for a moment before he turned toward the door. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out the door after him. The flashing lights of the police cars reflected in the window, but I didn't need to look. I had already made my peace. Grandpa wasn't just a man of wealth. He was a man of power. And in that moment, I understood exactly how it felt to have that power in my hands. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. And in that moment, I realized something. Life isn't fair. But when life isn't fair, you don't just deal with it. You take back what's yours. The cool night air outside felt strangely comforting. The flashing lights of the police cars were fading, but the weight of what had just happened didn't. It was like a slow burn, the kind that settles deep into your bones and refuses to leave. As I walked down the hallway, I felt an unexpected sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't just the poor kid anymore. I wasn't the one left in the dark, struggling to make sense of a world that never made sense. I had found my footing. I had found my power. Grandpa had made sure of that. I had been waiting for this moment for so long. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure what to feel. There was no triumph, no joy, no sense of victory. What I felt was something far more complicated: relief. When I stepped outside, I saw Grandpa waiting by the car, the cool night air swirling around him. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his eyes, something that told me everything I needed to know. "You've done well," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "But I want you to remember this." He paused, his gaze steady. "Sometimes taking back what's yours isn't about revenge. It's about justice." I nodded, my throat tight. "I understand." Grandpa's eyes softened for a moment before he turned and opened the car door for me. As I climbed inside, I felt something shift in me. For the first time, I wasn't a victim. I wasn't the one standing at the mercy of someone else's choices. I was in control. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even disappointed. I had taken back what was mine. And in that moment, I realized that life isn't fair. But when it isn't, you don't just deal with it. You take back what's yours. The cool night air outside felt strangely comforting. The flashing lights of the police cars were fading in the distance, but the weight of what had just happened didn't lift. It was like a slow burn, the kind that settles deep into your bones and refuses to leave. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the crisp night air, trying to shake off the overwhelming sensation that had taken hold of me. Every part of me felt heavy. This wasn't what I thought it would be. I'd imagined some grand moment of victory, a rush of satisfaction as everything I had been waiting for finally fell into place. But that wasn't it. What I felt now was peace. I had spent so many years living in the dark, always unsure of what was really going on, always guessing and second-guessing the world around me. I'd been the kid who had to beg for fairness, who had to scrape and fight for the smallest slivers of attention or recognition. But not anymore. As I walked down the hallway, I could feel it settling in, this strange, unexpected peace. My footsteps were steady. My mind was clear. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what the world had done to me. I wasn't the poor kid anymore. I had found my footing. I had found my power. Grandpa had made sure of that. He had known. He had always known. And in some twisted way, I was grateful. Grateful that he had kept the secret for so long, watching from the sidelines while I fought my battles, unsure of what I was truly entitled to. But now, with the truth laid bare, I finally understood. Grandpa didn't just give me a fortune. He had given me something far more valuable: control over my own destiny. I had been waiting for this moment for so long. It was like a fog had been lifted, and I could finally see clearly. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure what to feel. There was no triumph in the air, no rush of victory. What I felt was something deeper, something far more complicated: relief. The anger, the resentment, the desire to get even, it was all gone. The hole that had been gnawing at me for years seemed to vanish in the blink of an eye. I stepped outside, the cool breeze hitting my face, grounding me. Grandpa stood by the car, the dim glow from the streetlights casting shadows over his features. His presence was commanding, even without a word. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his eyes, a mixture of pride and regret, as though he knew the weight of everything that had just transpired. "You've done well," he said quietly, his voice steady, almost grave. "But I want you to remember this." He paused, his gaze intense, as if he wanted to make sure I understood every word. "Sometimes taking back what's yours isn't about revenge. It's about justice." His words hung in the air, sinking deep into my chest. For so long I had imagined revenge. I had fantasized about the moment when everything would come crashing down on my mother, when the lies and the manipulations would finally catch up to her. But what Grandpa was telling me, what I was starting to understand, was that this wasn't about paying her back. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about setting things right, about finally having the truth laid bare, and finding a way to move forward. "I understand," I said quietly, my throat tight. I wasn't sure I truly understood everything in that moment, but I could feel it, deep down. This wasn't the way I had imagined things playing out, but it was the way it had to be. It had to be about closure. It had to be about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, not just in terms of money, but in terms of my life, my peace, my sense of self. Grandpa's eyes softened for just a moment before he turned and opened the car door for me. The gesture felt oddly intimate, like he was handing me the reins to my future. The weight of his silence spoke volumes. He knew the power that now rested in my hands. And though he wasn't saying it outright, I could tell he was proud. Proud that I had finally found my way, that I had taken back control. I wasn't the helpless kid anymore. I wasn't the one begging for fairness. I had written my own ending. That I climbed into the car, the leather seat cool beneath me, and as the door shut with a soft thud, I felt a shift in me. It was subtle but undeniable. For the first time I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even disappointed. All the things I thought I would feel in this moment, none of them came. What I felt was something simpler, something more profound. I felt free. This wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about a battle fought and conquered. It was about reclaiming what had always been mine. It was about understanding that I was no longer bound by my past. I had become the person I needed to be. And I was ready to step into the future with my head held high. As we drove through the quiet streets, the world outside seemed to blur, the streetlights flickering as the car hummed softly along the road. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And I wasn't just living for myself. I was living for the person I had become, the person who had been held back for far too long, the person who now had the power to make choices, to create a life on my own terms. I wasn't just the poor kid anymore. I wasn't the one left in the dark. I was the one with the power to change my story. Life had never been fair. But now I understood. When life isn't fair, you don't just accept it. You don't sit back and let the world continue to pass you by. You take back what's yours.